white people are so afraid of the backlash or the consequences, I think, of saying, you know, to telling the truth about their lives, that, the toxic white culture that we've all been raised and immersed in, you know, what that's been like as far as experiences of either not recognizing our own racism or coming to a point of starting to recognize our own racism as part of the systemic racism in our country. But, what is there even a process that we can take even further beyond anti-racism? Because I think, one of the, and this is hard to talk about, but one of the issues is that not, everybody is so concerned with saying they're not racist because they don't want to be embarrassed or lose their job, or that, so that's the defense mechanism. But, what if we just acknowledge that we are all raised this way? I mean, it is something that has to be overcome, because we are just steeped in it, but from advertising to music to education to our textbooks to, our Sunday school classes and any other types of religious, patriarchal, institutions, and just the whole structure is set up to make us this way and to create a society that is now reaping, not just now, of course, but, reaping the fruits of that. And so, when do we get to the point of saying, like, that this country churns out racists,
yeah.
and that we have to admit that in order to get to the point where we can really, make changes in our society.
Well, I think admitting it is the first step. And then to go back to Bernice Powell Jackson's comment, social justice is hard. I think you need to be vigilant kind of in every area of your life, not just in the academy, not just in the church, not just in lecture halls and workshops and Zoom meetings and stuff like that, but in every aspect of your life, you've got to be aware that there is this kind of filter. Somebody said something like, we're like fish caught in a polluted stream. Well, we didn't cause the pollution, but we're in that stream. And so we've got to figure out how to deal with that.
And we definitely pooped in the stream a lot.
And we sure have.
I mean, even if we were not, we can take a lot back to our forefathers, but we've all pooped in the stream.
That's right.
As fish.
That's right. And we're more than fish too. That would be the other thing I would say to that. We've got to be people in this, and it's hard. It requires diligent attention to where we are in the unfolding of history around us. And one of the things that the last month has shown is, sadly, how easy it is, if we have but eyes to see the pervasive racism in our system. It's just incredible. And if you go just below the surface, of course, what happened to George Floyd, you don't even have to go below the surface. But if you go just below the surface, you become even more apparent, or it becomes even more apparent how deep, pervasive, and polluting it is.
Mm-hmm. And I think you made a really good point earlier when you evoked the Thanksgiving table. That is one of the hardest places for white people, I think, to stand up and speak out. There's a lot of white activists, and I taught, and allies, and there's this whole notion of allies, and people are doing specific work around race, and they're, it's easy to post things on social media. And one of the things I say in the intro video to this whole Honest White People project is, this is not about white people being saviors.
Mhm.
Like, there's a whole savior complex that you can run into with white people. And I would, I can't tell you how many times I've scrolled through Twitter and seen a white male religious leader bragging about being arrested at a protest for Black people. And, and that's not, like, that's not it, but it's so easy to be that kind of white person. But, when you are faced with 15 members of your family and your, crazy racist uncle and your mom and your dad who are 90 years old and, still use terrible terminology, and, you're with your family and it's Thanksgiving and somebody says something awful, and that those are the times when it really takes bravery. It's one thing to get attacked on social media, but it's another thing to be the one person in your family at the thing and they say you're ruining Thanksgiving and you're that, and I know a lot of people who have come at odds with their own families as and that's a common experience too. And I think that's something that Jesus said,
Yeah,
as long
right.
as us two reverends are here putting our heads together, is that it would be like a sword. Justice would be like and love would be like a sword, and it would divide families, and it would just be this clean cut,
Mhm.
in a sense. And do you have any advice for white people about, do sometimes is the work toward equity and equality and love and justice in our country, do we sometimes have to come to terms with friends falling away, families falling away, our own support? I've found that in a lot of ways you have to sacrifice some of these relationships and things, to go beyond just thinking you're a good ally to really being responsible for moving us forward.
Yeah, I think that happens, and I would say that it's inevitable that that's going to happen. I mean, that's what integrity is all about, and you need to be willing to sacrifice those comforts or those assets, if you will, for your sense of self and what the truth is and that kind of thing. I think that one of the uh, things I would recommend in this regard in terms of those kinds of conversations also is that you be smart about it. And I'm not saying be devious, but I'm saying be smart. Pick your battles, watch your language, remember to be empathetic with those that you might also disagree with, and don't try to do what unfortunately our president does so well, which is to add fuel to the flames. I mean, we were never told to check our minds at the door when we entered the sanctuary or the dining room where you have Thanksgiving dinner. Just keep a perspective on what's going to be effective. And again, not to be devious or not to be coy about it, but that's, I think, important. And it's so easy, as you know, when you become impassioned about something, to just go kind of crazy with your passion
Yeah.
and forget about what's an effective way to communicate things. So that
That's a
would be
very good point. There is, you have to gauge other white people's level of consciousness and, where they sort of are and what their very deep-seated beliefs are,
yeah.
and misperceptions and their history. And then, it can be much more effective to try to bring them along the journey in a way that they can move through that process of dropping that ego and dropping the defensiveness and things like that is definitely a process.
Yeah, it is a journey, as you said. It is a journey. And just to try to go to the end without really working through the beginning or the middle is often a mistake, and only serves to alienate people. And especially if they're people close to you, chances are you'd otherwise be with them in some kind of relationship over a long period of time. And there's time. It's been 400 years that this racist system has been built in this country. And, it's just wrong for us to assume that we can be driving past somebody on the highway and who we see, being racist in some kind of way and shout out the car and say, you racist, when that doesn't do any good, so I think.
How do we though at the same time, listen to our Black and brown sisters and brothers who are saying, we're dying right now. Our kids are dying. Our sisters and brothers are dying. Our communities it's life and death. We can't afford to think that way, which I can also feel into. How do we balance those two things?
I think back to what you said earlier. Sometimes you just have to step back and say, you need to fight this battle right now. This is your battle because you know more about it, because you're more involved in the network that is directly affected, or for whatever reason. And we've got to be okay with that. Part of the problem with this white privilege thing is that we've just kind of assumed the leadership, just like because we thought it was bestowed on us. And it's really important. And I think this is one of the things I've really looked for in the gun violence kind of issue with young people around Parkland and stuff. It was really important to see how many adults at that point did step back and let the young people lead that conversation. I think it's really important for us now too to see folks from Black Lives Matter and other people from the Black community taking the leadership role, assuming the mantle of leadership, and then leading us forward. And we have to follow. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have to agree with everything that is being said, but it's incumbent upon us to follow within the parameters of our own integrity.
And so following that leadership, which I couldn't agree more, because really seeing, highlighting the leadership, especially of amazing Black women right now. I just am so aware and, want to follow the leadership of Black women in particular as they're, fighting these battles, and Black men, of course, but just these voices that are rising, started rising around me too, as well, because of course, as we mentioned earlier, this is all very intersectional.
Right.
But at the same time, not saying, well, this is your problem.
Right.
We created it and now you have to fix it.
Right. That's why your project is so important, because I totally believe that this issue, this original sin of this country, is not going to be healed until people from the dominant culture, mostly white, not exclusively, but mostly white, are willing to own up to the privilege that they have and their role in creating the society that we currently have. So I really applaud you for doing this, because this is really, really needed right now. And it's courageous and risk-taking in its own right. So thank you for doing it.
Well, thanks for being in conversation, Bob. And thanks, for the things that you've always done in your career, and your willingness to always talk so explicitly about your experiences, and the humility that you've always modeled, I think is so important for white people right now to start to understand the concept of taking being brave and courageous enough and yet humble enough to take your privilege and to hand it over and to put it down.
Yeah.
And it's a spiritual exercise for white people is how I see it, very much so, to do that deep personal work as well as systemic work. But it's a deep personal work that each individual white person has to confront and to start to do, to be able to get to that point of bravery, to relinquish all of that, because it's the only way we're all going to be able to live together in this dream that we have of equity. So thank you so much, Bob. It's great.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you a lot of luck with this project. I think it's really important, and I'm really honored to have taken part. So thanks, Jen.
Bob. Okay.
Take care.